Hello. Thank you for taking time again today to spend a few minutes with me as we share some devotional thoughts. I trust that these are a blessing to you and a challenge. I'm challenged each time as I prepare and meditate on thoughts that I'd like to share with you. Last Sunday was Easter Sunday, and we celebrated the wonderful, amazing resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Actually, every Sunday should be a celebration of his resurrection because it was his resurrection that changed the day of worship from the Sabbath or Saturday to Sunday, the first day of the week. Every Sunday when we gather together and worship, we are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Every time at this time of year, every year, I try to imagine myself in the story that took place over 2,000 years ago. And I wonder how I would have responded. I wonder if I would have been just like the disciples. I wonder if I would have turned and fled. I wonder if I would not have believed when he rose from the dead. They had all expected him to set up an earthly kingdom. They had expected him to overthrow the oppressive Romans. They had expected him to become the king, and instead he'd been crucified. Not only had he been crucified, he didn't even put up a fight. But after that disappointment and seeming defeat, he arose again and demonstrated to them the great victory that came out of that entire situation. The very worst thing they could have imagined was that he would die. But he rose again. This, of course, is a great example that sometimes that which looks like defeat is really a victory. My thoughts go back to the life of Joseph in the Old Testament. The book of Genesis tells his story, and perhaps everyone listening knows that story. But let me briefly repeat it. Joseph was from a dysfunctional family before that was even a term they used. Joseph's father had children from 4 different wives. And because Joseph was the only son of his father's favorite wife, he became the favorite son. Because of this and all the demonstrations that his dad gave him that he was a favorite, his brothers hated him and looked for an opportunity to hurt him. Literally, when they had the opportunity, they sold him into slavery. And in slavery, he was sold to a man who would later on falsely accuse him and put him in jail. Things went on downward from there. While he was in jail, he had an opportunity, he thought, to make an appeal, but instead he was forgotten by the one who was supposed to speak up for him. Through some amazing circumstances, God allowed Joseph to be released from prison and elevated to become the second leading man in that nation, second only to the Pharaoh of that land. God meant it for good. But years later, his brothers came, the ones who had sold him into slavery, the ones who had hated him, and he had the opportunities, if he had so chosen, to get revenge on his brothers. Instead, he said, as the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 50 and verse 20, "But as for you," he said, "ye thought evil against me, but God meant it for good." God meant it for good. I found a quote by A.W. Tozier that I liked. It says this: "It is often difficult to tell in a given instance whether we've been defeated or are victorious in a conflict. Sometimes what looks like a defeat will be seen later to have been a positive victory. The resurrection shows that this is true. What seemed to be a defeat was really a great victory. Joseph's life proves this is true. What seemed to be a great defeat was a great victory." Have you found that so in your life? Can you give illustrations of that in your life? I think we can give more biblical illustrations. What looked like a great defeat for Daniel when he was thrown into the den of lions was actually a great victory when he came out alive and well. What seemed like a great defeat for the three friends of Daniel, also mentioned in the book of Daniel, when they were cast into the fiery furnace, turned out to be a great victory for them. What looks like a victory what looks like a defeat, can become a great victory. This has happened in my life and probably in yours. When God changed circumstances when I was an associate for so many years, I felt like I was going to be an associate at that church probably for 50 years. And God changed things. Not only did he change my heart, but he changed the direction of the church, giving me complete assurance that I was not able to stay there. I had to take a leap out into what to me was the unknown. And it felt like a defeat. It felt like a disappointment. And yet, from that disappointment, God brought me here to Milford, where we have had a wonderful, joyous ministry all these years. Thank the Lord for what seemed like a defeat really became a victory. So, in your life, I believe I'm probably speaking to a man or a woman or perhaps a teenager who's going through something or has just been through something, and you feel defeated. You feel disappointed. Let me assure you that if you are following the Lord, if you are doing what you know is right, if you have confessed any known sin in your life, sit back and watch God work. What seems like a great defeat, what seems like a great disappointment, may be the greatest victory you ever experience in your life. Remember what Joseph said. They thought it for evil, but God meant it for good. I trust today that you will be able to see what God's doing in your life and understand that God means it for good. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.